On this episode of Locked On Grizzlies, is your bracket busted yet? I know mine is. We'll briefly talk about that. Plus, I want to remind everybody to keep in mind one Marcus Smart. Don't forget about him. Don't forget about Brandon Clarke either. He's coming back soon. We'll mention that reality, and we'll take a look at Grizzlies-Spurs. All that and more on this Friday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is Friday. Got to get down on Friday. Fun. Looking forward to the weekend. A wise poet once said or sang those words, and I'm saying them to you, dear listener, dear viewer, on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, flying solo on this episode. No DeMichael Cole. He has picked up my old and washed weight this week, covering on the late night game. So I've got him, helping him start a 3-day weekend early. He can enjoy the tournament, do the things he needs to do, and I will help you end your week with Locked On Grizzlies, as you should do each and every week. And each and every time an episode drops, you should be checking us out, hopefully as an everydayer for Locked On Grizzlies. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. We here at Locked On Grizzlies are free and available wherever you get your podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get podcasts, each and every place, it is all good. You can almost certainly find Locked On Grizzlies. Subscribe, like, rate, comment, all that good stuff. We welcome feedback. We welcome conversation in the comments. We welcome ideas. And I will even welcome on this Friday, I'm still in a good mood. The Kentucky Wildcats fell, unfortunately, at the hands of the Oakland Grizzlies. Kind of ironic, right? For those of you in Memphis, that John Calipari get knocked off by the Grizzlies probably did a Memphian or two's heart well there on Thursday night. My bracket's busted. For those of you that are in the March Madness ESPN bracket with us, I had Kentucky in the championship game. So much for believing in NBA's quality talent backcourts, right? I'll never make that mistake again, at least not when they're coached by John Calipari. But my bracket's busted. It's that time of year. It's March. It's a lot of fun to watch these games, even when you're probably not going to win your bracket group. It's all good. As long as I beat DeMichael, fingers crossed. It's still going to be pretty close with that, but we'll see how it all plays out. You're not here for Locked On tournament bracket talk. You're here for Locked On Grizzlies, and we're going to jump right into that type of talk. We talked a lot about Gigi Jackson this week, right? The shows that I've been on, the shows that DeMichael Cole has hosted. Gigi has had a phenomenal week, and he's had a really impressive rookie season. So impressive, in fact, that even though it is a condensed rookie season, he has not played nearly as many games as some of those in the mix alongside him for the all-rookie team, right? He's not probably even going to be eligible because of games played. But he is considered on the NBA's rookie ladder that they put out, among the top 10 or so rookies in the NBA right now. And I'm sure that ranking is not going to be hurt by his performance against the Golden State Warriors, right? A career best 35 points. Shout outs from Chris Paul, his former AAU coach, which is funny to say out loud. Gigi Jackson's impressive. And the conversation has been, and will continue to be, should Gigi Jackson be the starting three? Because on one hand, this is the guy we've been waiting for, right? Like, it's going to sound kind of funny for me to harp on a 6'3" guard and try to make an argument for him to continue to be a key part of this when we are literally watching a 19-year-old, 6'9", 215 or so pound stud score the basketball in numerous ways, improve by leaps and bounds as a defender. This is what we've been waiting for. This is what we hoped Rudy Gay would be, right? For those of you that have been around as long as me, 2011 Memphis Grizzlies fans, stand up. This is the dream. They finally found the guy. Yes, but, and I want to stress this, in no way, shape, or form is this an indictment of Gigi Jackson. the way that they have handled him this year in the wake of all of the craziness that's transpired, right? In all the injuries, the John Morant suspension, it feels like it's been 4 seasons wrapped up in one. Despite all that, they have handled the GG situation great. And to his credit, GG Jackson has handled it even better than the Grizzlies have handled it. He has taken this opportunity and run with it. Because if the Grizzlies were healthy, let's be honest, GG Jackson's not playing right now. If the Grizzlies were what they were supposed to be, we don't know if GG Jackson can do this. So there is some positivity and some truth that has come out of these difficult days. But there's also some truth that people forget. And one of those truths is the need for playoff experience on a roster that has had issues in the playoffs. And that is something that Marcus Smart provides that GG Jackson simply cannot. Now, this is not an argument for Marcus Smart starting in front of GG Jackson. There'll be a time and a place for that. And I want to make sure DeMichael's alongside me for that conversation. And I think that it's fairly easy to make an argument for starting GG Jackson, especially since he's improving as a defender at the rate that he's growing. I'm not making an argument right now for Marcus Smart when the team is healthy in front of GG Jackson as a starter. I'm not even necessarily making an argument for Marcus Smart in front of GG Jackson in closing time, which most folks will say, and I partially agree, that matters more than who starts. The rotation and who closes games, that's a focus for a lot of folks, understandably so. For me, I am not going to forget the fact that Marcus Smart has started or played in, not necessarily started, 108 postseason games. 108. And it's not like Marcus Smart is some elderly guy. We're not talking about a person who could run for president of the United States here, right? That's not this Marcus Smart. This Marcus Smart is older. This Marcus Smart is a veteran on this team. But this Marcus Smart can still play basketball at a very high level. This Marcus Smart has the physical ability going into his age 30 season to do the things that the Memphis Grizzlies need him to do as a defender. Still one of the better perimeter defenders in the NBA. Maybe not as good as he was a couple years ago, but still pretty damn good. He can create offense for himself and for others, especially as a secondary playmaker. And that is where DeMichael Cole has discussed at length, and I agree with him. We need to see a grander sample size of GG Jackson doing that. Not to say he can't, but we have certainly seen him be able to score the ball at all 3 levels. We have not seen him consistently create offense for others. And that is a skill that he's going to have if he's a starter. Because riddle me this, dear listener, dear viewer. Who do you want GG Jackson taking shots from if he is a starter? John Morant? Not me. Desmond Bane? Absolutely not. Jaren Jackson Jr.? Maybe we have that conversation, but he's one of the best isolation scorers in the league this year. So the eventual argument, and I'm tipping my hand a little bit, against GG Jackson as a starter for me has to do with balancing the ability of the team to score and be able to score in bunches consistently. Marcus Smart can impact winning without scoring the basketball. Marcus Smart can defend, he can rebound, he can create for others. He is a glue piece. He's a foundational role player, potentially, for this team. Something that we haven't seen enough of a sample size of either, in fairness, because of injuries and all of that. So this isn't necessarily an argument for Marcus Smart over GG Jackson just yet. I want to stress that. And in the here and now, it doesn't matter. I don't necessarily want to see Marcus Smart play again this season. GG Jackson can keep getting all these reps, keep developing a sample size where he shows the capacity to be that creator for others. And again, he shows flashes, but I need to see more. Don't forget about what Marcus Smart was brought here to be. He was not brought here to be a babysitter. He said that himself. He was here, or he has been brought here to be someone that can help this team contend for championships. Because in the past, he has contended for championships. And while GG Jackson is putting up impressive numbers, the Memphis Grizzlies are 1-4 in their last 5 games. And they've had Desmond Bane, they've had Jaren Jackson Jr. out there. For all the tremendous scoring that GG Jackson did against the Warriors, it was in a double-digit 20-plus point loss. Don't forget Marcus Smart. Not hating on Gigi Jackson. Somebody in the comment is going to say I'm a Gigi Jackson hater. I'm not. He is a key component of this rotation next year. He's earned that. Championship contending team, guy turning 20. Phenomenal thing to have. We haven't even mentioned Vince Williams Jr. There's going to be plenty of time for these conversations in the weeks and months to come. I just wanted to take this moment to remind you of what Marcus Smart can be. He was the glue to the Boston Celtics, a team that has had tremendous success. And yeah, that success has continued without him. But that's not the point. The point is Marcus Smart was part of building a foundation of winning that has sustained beyond him. And that is one of the ultimate measures of success. Did you leave a place better than it was when you got there? It's hard to say Marcus Smart didn't do that for Boston. Can he do that for Memphis? I believe he can. Don't forget about what Marcus Smart can be. Be excited about Gigi. Don't forget Marcus Smart. That's a reminder heading into our weekend here on Locked On Grizzlies. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, maybe somebody else that you've forgotten about, Brandon Clarke, hello, possibly returning next week. Again, the rumors, DeMichael's talked a little bit about this. You see it elsewhere. Maybe the Lakers game on Wednesday night at home. That would be pretty exciting. Will that actually be the case? And if it is the case, how do you use Brandon Clarke the remainder of this season and then maybe even into next year? We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. But first, this episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Prize Picks. It's demon time on Prize Picks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. That is phenomenal. You can do it with Prize Picks and the Demons and the Goblins, which are the newest and most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. And again, you can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. How awesome is that? What a tremendous opportunity Prize Picks provides. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, you're playing against the stats. You're playing against the numbers. You're not playing against individuals at Prize Picks. It is so much fun. prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. One more time, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, talking Brandon Clarke and how he should be used the rest of the season. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, your host for this episode of the podcast. Flying solo to Michael Cole, getting a well-deserved day off after carrying my old, decrepit, unable to stay up late weight over these last couple of late-night games. Shout out to DeMichael. He did a great job this week. And shout out to you for making it through the week. We made it. It's Friday. We're here, boys and girls, and I'm very excited to be here with you on this episode of Locked On Grizzlies to close out our week. Don't forget Marcus Smart, and don't forget that Brandon Clarke is coming back too, and that is someone that the Grizzlies haven't had in a year, right? He got hurt roughly a year ago, blowing out that Achilles tendon, a very serious injury. He looks pretty good in warm-ups and in workouts during the All-Star break with Jaren Jackson Jr., reports, including from our own DeMichael Cole, the commercial appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, talking about Wednesday, maybe aiming for that return to FedEx Forum, the Lakers game, as a potential opportunity to see Brandon Clarke back on the floor for the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies have roughly, 10 games left in this season? I think that it's around that number. They have the Spurs, right, coming up tonight. They play the Spurs. And then they go to Denver a few days later, take on the Nuggets. And then on the 27th, again, Wednesday, they are back at home against the Lakers. So there's a few games coming up. The Lakers game has kind of been circled as the contest that Brandon Clarke may return for. And then from there, we're talking roughly 9 or 10 games, right? So maybe 14 total games left for the Grizzlies this season, 9 or so, 10 or so from that Lakers game at home towards the end of the month. How does it make sense to use Brandon Clarke in these final contests? Well, I think it makes sense to deploy him as a starter. I think it makes sense to put him in as the 4 and Jaren Jackson Jr. as the 5. And here is why. Because, again, the purpose of the remainder of this season is to gather as much data as you can, trying to figure out what this team could be with a healthy Joe Morant, with a healthy Marcus Smart, with the team and roster more fully intact. And if you truly believe that Jaren Jackson Jr. can play the 5, and I think that is a thought that is rattling around in the brains of the Memphis Grizzlies, that front office, deep in their cerebellum, they are considering the reality that could exist, where Jaren Jackson Jr. is your starting 5 and Brandon Clarke is your starting 4. Rebounding be damned. That's a topic for another show. If you want to see what that looks like, you got to actually play it, right? And I think that Brandon Clarke getting that opportunity makes a lot of sense. I would love to see it alongside G.G. Jackson, Vince Williams Jr., Desmond Bane. Hopefully, at some point the rest of this season, we get to see that starting 5, or at the very least, that lineup. Maybe they want to bring him off the bench, ease him in, get him some game reps, keep him around 15 to 20 minutes, get him out. He hasn't played NBA basketball in a year. So that would make sense. I wouldn't belabor that point. But I would want to see that. I would want to see Bane, Williams Jr., GG, Clarke, Jackson Jr. Because, again, you're getting as close as you potentially could be to a starting 5. Joe Morant obviously is replacing somebody. Maybe Marcus Smart is. Maybe he's not, right? We'll have those arguments and debates further on down the road. But I want to see Brandon Clarke alongside as many guys that he's actually going to play with next season as possible. Because no disrespect to the guys that have been logging minutes for the Memphis Grizzlies. No disrespect to the likes of Santi Aldama, right? Who might be trade fodder. We'll talk a little bit more about that next week on Locked On Grizzlies. No disrespect to Jake LaRavia. No disrespect to Trey Jemison. No disrespect to anybody else on that Grizzlies reserve group that logged minutes off the bench for Memphis. They're not going to be here. Okay? They're going to be end of rotation guys at best. They're going to be playing for other teams. They're going to be playing in the G League on two-way deals. They are not members of this rotation when they are trying to compete for a championship again. Santi Aldama, maybe. Again, we'll talk more about Santi next week. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to be there. G.G. Jackson is going to be there. If John Conchar is going to be there, it sure as heck isn't going to be as a starter. I'm sure somebody will tell me about how wonderful John Conchar was against the Warriors, although he didn't score a single point in 33 minutes of play. Took 2 shots, but he got 7 rebounds and 5 assists, Joe. What a tremendous player. John Conchar shouldn't start another game. Period. Regardless of Brandon Clarke, but I digress. Brandon Clarke, Jaren Jackson Jr. as your starting bigs next to Vince Williams Jr., G.G. Jackson, Desmond Bane. I would want to see that starting lineup. And I would, again, Luke Kennard's eventually going to return. Congratulations to Luke and his wife, birth of the new baby. Luke Kennard will eventually return. You'll see some other pieces that figure to either be trade fodder, again, because Luke Kennard could be in that conversation, right? Maybe even Marcus Smart, but I think Kennard and Aldama make more sense. I wouldn't trade Kennard, but you already know that, dear listener, dear viewer. But Luke Kennard will eventually be back. I want to see him with Brandon Clarke. I want to see the guys that are going to be in this rotation. I want to see as much of that as possible for 2 reasons. One, again, continuing to maintain that chemistry, that camaraderie, rediscovering it with Brandon Clarke. He hasn't played in so long. But on the same hand, to be honest with you, can I be honest with you on this Friday, me and you? Between us, I just want to watch good basketball. I just want to watch basketball that's competitive. And I want to watch it from guys that aren't plucky underdogs, that are struggling and strifing and scratching and clawing to make the NBA team. We're going to see plenty of that over these last few weeks of this season. I want to see Brandon Clarke soaring through the air on the end of a Vince Williams Jr. or Desmond Bane alley-oop pass. I want to see Jaren Jackson Jr. trying to get around a screen in the 2-man game with Brandon Clarke as the pick guy. I want to see creativity. I want to see him be able to display that athleticism that has made him such an integral part of this Grizzlies team to this point. And I want to see it around the dudes that he's actually going to be expected to compete for an NBA championship with next year. That is how I would deploy Brandon Clarke. I would start him. You want to limit his minutes, that's fine. I would make sure that he plays as much with the guys that are actually going to be here as possible. You want to include John Conchar in that conversation? That's fine. But Clarke needs to log minutes with dudes that are actually going to be pieces of this puzzle beyond when this regular season ends. That's what I want to see. What do you want to see from Brandon Clarke going into his eventual return, potentially next week at home against the Los Angeles Lakers? Hit us up in the comments and let us know. I want to remind you, in case you forgot, that the wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Locked On Sports Today is here. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume because of all the shouting? Choose Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the best stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube as well as the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every day. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die whip alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it is easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home the win. Keep your ride or die whip alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to United States customers. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, closing out this episode, previewing Grizzlies-Spurs, or whoever we hope will play for Memphis in the contest. Stick with us. Welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am Joe Mullinax, flying solo on this episode to Michael Cole, the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, my tremendous co-host, beat writer covering the Memphis Grizzlies for that publication. As I've mentioned a couple of times on this episode, I'm old, dear listener, dear viewer. I don't know if you know that or not. I am 37 years old. That is ancient in blogger and podcaster years. And DeMichael has to, help me out every once in a while when the Grizzlies are on these West Coast swings and they're playing late. So shout out to DeMichael, a well-deserved day off for him. And shout out to you, dear listener, dear viewer, for making it through another week here with us here at Locked On Grizzlies and for checking out our show today. I've reminded people to not forget about Marcus Smart. I feel like we're losing sight of why he's here. And we're going to talk more about that as the offseason trudges along, I'm sure. I also talked about Brandon Clarke and how I would use him moving forward. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments. I want to see him play as much as possible with the guys he's going to play with as much as possible moving forward when he returns, hopefully next week. But before we get to that, we have to talk about another basketball game tonight. The Memphis Grizzlies in San Antonio taking on the Spurs. It's going to be an interesting contest. The Memphis Grizzlies have an injury list that is pretty vast, right? We're getting used to that. Jaren Jackson Jr. not on the injury list. That's a positive, but Desmond Bane is unlikely to play, doubtful as of this recording for that contest. Lots of guys likely out. What matters moving forward is not the opponent, right? Victor Wembanyama is extremely impressive. The Spurs have played better basketball of late at times. Same thing with Memphis, right? We have felt good about overtime losses. We felt good about competing with the Oklahoma City Thunder in a better manner than we had the week prior. But the reality is both of these teams have lost 4 of their last 5 games. Both of these teams are considered among the worst in the NBA. So for all the hype about Victor Wembanyama and the numbers he's putting up, and they are impressive, it's not leading directly to Spurs victories, at least not right now. For all the wonderful things that G.G. Jackson is doing, the legitimate growth he has shown as a defender, the scoring acumen, it's not translating to wins right now. That's a problem. How does Memphis find a way to win? They have to be able to move the ball fast enough to get around the size of the Spurs. If they can't do that, they're not going to win. The Spurs are long. The Spurs have nothing to lose, much like the Grizzlies. They're going to go out there and freely compete. Both teams are more interested in ping pong balls, at least their front offices at this time, than anything else. So for Memphis to go out there and be in a position to beat this Spurs team, they have to be able to swing the ball around, up and over, past the San Antonio team, because Victor Wembanyama's frame is phenomenal. He has length. He's putting up tremendous stat line after tremendous stat line. The guy can go. And again, for the Grizzlies, we're talking about a list that's 10 deep of players that are either out for this contest or more than likely out. Conchar is questionable. I'm aching and jonesing for John Conchar. That's how bad this is right now. So who actually plays matters in terms of wins and losses. But from game to game, when you're looking at this list, these injuries, when you're trying to figure out what to find, to see, to look for, in G.G. Jackson, that need to be a creator, right? I know he can score. I know he can. I've seen it time and time again at this stage. We have a large enough sample. He has earned an NBA contract from a two-way deal. He's a scorer, baby. And that's one of the things I'm most excited about going into next year. Yeah, they might have found long-term their 6'9" starting wing. In the short term, they might have found their bench bucket getter to help balance out their offense. We've been longing for one of those for a while too. Shout out to OJ Mayo. So the Memphis Grizzlies are in a position where it's good news either way with G.G. Jackson. But if you want it to be great news, if you want it to be this is the dude, another starter, core cog piece alongside Jaren and Ja and Dez, you got to see him create more. We know Marcus Smart can do that. He's done it at the highest level of competition the NBA has to offer. G.G. Jackson can't necessarily do it in meaningless games. He's 19, doesn't mean he won't be able to do it eventually. The ceiling is extremely high, and that's one of the best arguments for playing G.G. Jackson in that role. He raises the ceiling. But in order for that ceiling to raise, he has to meet the floor. And part of that floor for me is he has to show the ability to consistently create for others. Doesn't have to be primary carrier of that burden, but he needs to be able to do it on a secondary manner. He has to be better at it than someone like John Conchar. If he can't do that, I don't know that he can start for me. But he has opportunity to show that he can. Jaren Jackson Jr., what can he do against a guy like Victor Wembanyama? There aren't too many times where Jaren is both out-athleted and outsized, right? Jaren usually has one of those advantages. That's one of the reasons he's a mismatch. But Victor Wembanyama has the skill set of a guard in a lot of ways. And he has the size of a legitimate NBA big, especially the length. So what is Jaren going to do? Is he going to be able to take advantage of the lack of mobility that Wembanyama still has? Maybe the spatial recognition of Wembanyama is still off, and Jaren can take advantage of that with his experience. How is he going to work this? Is he just going to chuck threes? Is he going to be aggressive and try to get to the rim and get to the free throw line? Can he continue his growth as a creator of offense for others? Because he's not perfect in that way by any stretch of the imagination, but this is easily his best season in terms of assist percentage, according to Cleaning the Glass. So can Jaren continue to create? Can Gigi continue to create? Doesn't mean that they have to have necessarily a bunch of assists, because the guys they're playing next to may not be able to make shots. But within the set pieces of the offense, within the rhythm of the scheme that Taylor Jenkins has established, are they able to get the ball into the hands of the open man? That matters. The Grizzlies are almost a top 10 defense, even with all this craziness around them. The defense is going to play, especially against the Spurs team that is not as offensively effective as the Warriors, don't have the same weapons. Can the offense be carried by secondary creation and the ability to move the ball? That's what I'm going to keep an eye on, and I think you should too. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Locked On Grizzlies. Remember, we are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe, wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube, Amazon, Apple, Spotify, literally anywhere you get a podcast, you can find us on Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports Today, our first national 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find it on Amazon Fire TV and the free channels app. Next time we're together, it will be Monday. It'll be a dreary day because it's Monday, but we're going to be back together, and that's something to be excited about. Obviously, we have Grizzlies basketball to discuss, how the Spurs contest went, and the Grizzlies also, looking ahead a little bit, have a couple of days off going into a game on Monday, right? Just confirming that. Yeah, going into a game on Monday in Denver. And then they return home to the friendly confines of FedEx Forum for a game on Wednesday against the Lakers. Perhaps we'll have a little bit more of an update on Brandon Clarke at that point. Maybe we'll see where we're at in terms of the return there and all sorts of other things to look forward to as the season continues to draw to a close. For Michael Cole, my wonderful partner who did a great job this week, I appreciate him, and I appreciate you, dear listener, dear viewer. Hopefully at this point you are an everydayer to Locked On Grizzlies, checking us out every time an episode drops. If not, smash that subscribe button. Make Locked On Grizzlies a part of your NBA and Grizzlies content consumption. And it's okay if your bracket's busted. Enjoy basketball. It's one of the best times of the year for basketball. Even though the Memphis Grizzlies are struggling, it's a time to enjoy the game. Watch it, love it, live it. We'll catch you back here on Monday here on Locked On Grizzlies. Again, for Michael Cole, I'm Joe Mullinax. Stay locked in. Amazon, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. We'll catch you next time on Locked On Grizzlies.